Good morning, everybody. Happy Tuesday. We have an amazing show for everybody today. What do we have, Krystal?
Indeed, we do. A lot of big stories to get to this morning. We are continuing to closely follow the Russia war in Ukraine and the possibility of a nuclear attack. Seems like something we should all be paying a lot of attention to and something the media should have been paying attention to all the way along. So We'll dig into all of that. In addition, we have new developments with regarding the emerging energy crisis in Europe in particular, and gas prices here at home also set to continue going up. So we'll take a look at that. We also have some other new indicators about the economy, digging into the housing market, digging into the job market, which is showing signs of slowing, exactly what the Fed intended for it to do, even though the UN is warning that if the Fed and other central banks around the world continue hiking interest rates, they could trigger a severe recession. So we'll talk about that. Boy, do we have some news for you about the midterms. We've got some polls out in Nevada, but the big story this morning is what the hell is going on in Georgia. Some major family drama from Herschel Walker after a story came out alleging that he had paid for an abortion for a girlfriend a while back. So we'll get into all of that. It is an ugly story, but very relevant for what's going to happen with the midterms ultimately.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and then the last thing we're going to take a look at, you guys are probably aware of this story from the NFL. Quarterback who had appeared to suffer a concussion was allowed back in a game, and then 4 days later he's on the field again, suffers what appears to be a fairly severe brain injury. I mean, the videos of this are horrific, raising all kinds of questions about what the hell is going on in the NFL, how this man was allowed to back in the game to start with and then to play 4 days later. So we'll break all of that down for you. A great guest on as well, Branko Marcetic, to talk about the war in Ukraine and the media's failures with that regard. Before we get to any of that, though, live show.
Number one, live show. Put it up there on the screen. That's right. We've got the tickets on sale. We've got some awesome production that's happening right now that we're planning, a lot of audience participation. It is going to be a real experience. It's going to be good vibes only. If the world is going to end, we're at least going to do it on our own terms. And then number two, counterpoints. Man, they did such a fantastic job on Friday. I'm excited to see what they're going to do tomorrow. They're having their special Wednesday. I guess we should have made a special actually Wednesday counterpoints tomorrow because Ryan and Emily are going to be out on Friday. But they always do a fantastic job, and we've got the discount going on right now, 10% off on the annual membership. It really does help us out so much in terms of hiring, in terms of producing, and we are going to have some news on the hiring front very soon for everybody.
Indeed.
Introducing the new crew member here to the Breaking Points team, made entirely possible by all of you. It just means so much that you're able to fund us so that we can pay two, salaries on top of all the contractors and so many people who support this show. So once again, I just want to say thank you to all those premium members who are out there.
Super excited to make that announcement imminently. We actually just informed him yesterday that, we wanted to bring him on board. Some of you will actually know.
Some of them will know.
We'll just leave it at that for now. But very excited. I think he's going to be a phenomenal addition to the team. James is also excited, both to get the help, but also, the two of them are already sort of like mind melding. So it's going to be great.
So. It's going to be good. All right, let's get to the news. Ukraine. Obviously, we have to keep all of our eyes on what's happening with the nuclear posture in Russia. Now, one of the cautions that the U.S. military, the administration, and others have said is that we will take Putin seriously if we begin to see movement of actual nuclear assets inside of Russia. So something that we all need to become familiar with is something called the 12th Directorate. It is the division of the Russian military which is responsible for nuclear weapons. They have a variety of different assets on the land. One of them is trains in terms of the mobile movement of the supposed missiles that they, if possible, were to be deployed, would be deployed by this division. So all eyes exactly on that. So let's go ahead and put this up there on the screen. This was breaking out of the Times of London in the UK that says Putin orders the nuclear military train to the Ukrainian front line. Now, I want to be very clear here. This is sourced specifically to defense sources in the UK, has not been yet confirmed by the Pentagon. So I went ahead and checked last night, Krystal. There was a Defense Department briefing. A senior administration official on background was actually asked at the Pentagon, the highest level, Mr., I'm assuming it was either the Secretary of Defense or it was a Pentagon press secretary. I'm not sure which it was because it was technically on background. But I read through the text and he just said, quote, "I have no information for you on that." Not denying it, not confirming it either. So that is at the highest level from the United States. Again, has not been yet confirmed or addressed at the highest level in the UK. This is purely sourced here. It is also citing a defense analyst who was based in Poland who said that the train was spotted in central Russia and linked to the the 12th Main Directorate of the Russian Ministry of Defense, responsible for nuclear munitions, their storage, maintenance, transport, and issuance to units. So, why does this matter? All eyes are going to be on this train, on this 12th Directorate, because it would presage any potential nuclear strike. Now, of course, the Russians also have the capability to do this completely out of the blue if they want. I mean, they're great power military at the nuclear level in particular. They have submarines that are capable of this. They have cruise missiles, hypersonics, and all of that. Their belief here is that because the 12th Directorate also has the responsibility over the so-called tactical nuclear weapons, that given the type of strike that anybody would expect if the unthinkable were to happen, it would probably be under their purview because of their responsibility for handling these so-called tactical nukes. And I think we should, again, revisit this for everybody who's on the show, because something that we said yesterday was that a tactical nuke can be as small as, and I would just want to emphasize this, as small as included an artillery shell that takes out a single unit. But that's not what it's limited to, and that's why I think the entire thing is a misnomer. It can also be 100 times more powerful than the bomb that was dropped on Hiroshima. That also falls within the realm of a quote-unquote tactical nuclear weapon, which is exactly why this is so dangerous in the first place. And, just to reiterate the explanation for those who may not have heard yesterday, part of the reason why I think this is so important is that there is no such thing as a quote-unquote tactical nuke, because even if a tactical quote-unquote nuclear weapon is used just to take out our city block with an artillery shell, or even at the 100-ton level, sorry, not 100-ton. When I say 100 times more powerful than the Moab bomb, remember that one, the mother of all bombs that we dropped on Afghanistan under Trump? Such an event is just so like groundbreaking in terms of what it means for the situation that it would automatically result in a change in the overall strategic posture. Thus, it doesn't have any tactical case for its use. It only has the ability to strategically push the situation in a totally different direction, either outright war with Russia between NATO, the United States, and Russia, or basically blank check to the Ukrainians. You guys get anything that you could possibly want, or actual capitulation by the Ukrainian state after a horrific strike. All of those things would change the picture dramatically.
The bottom line is there is no one on Earth who can promise you that in the event of a quote-unquote tactical nuclear strike that you do not enter a chain of never-ending escalation that results in all-out nuclear war.
That's right.
That's why we are so skeptical of this idea that there is in fact a thing that is just quote-unquote a tactical nuclear weapon, because ultimately, okay, the chain of escalation may take a little bit longer, but you're still in a situation where, okay, then what does the US and NATO do? Okay, what does Russia do in response to that? Okay, then what do we do in response to that? And as I said, there is no one, even the people who would argue that, yes, there is a tactical nuclear weapon, and yes, we can keep the escalation chain from going, there is no one who can guarantee you that. That's why this is such an important and frankly terrifying red line. I mean, listen, with regard to this nuclear train situation, obviously Putin is right now in the business of trying very hard to persuade the West that he is very serious about the possibility of using tactical nuclear weapons to defend what he now considers his territory, even though they can't even agree on exactly where those territorial lines are. I mean, think about how insane that is. Right now, and we're going to get to this in a minute, but right now in Russia, they literally don't know where the borders of their own country are. Like, that's how crazy this whole situation is. And then you're threatening to use nuclear weapons to defend borders that you have not even defined and that your own people don't know where they are. That's the level of insanity and like a terrifying situation that we're facing down right now. Now, to the people who would say like, oh, you can't just like, you shouldn't appease this guy and you can't give in to these nuclear threats because then ultimately, everybody will want a nuclear weapon because you see the way they serve as deterrents. Yeah, they do. That's called reality. I mean, we would be handling this situation very differently if Russia was not a nuclear-armed state. That's just the reality of the situation. So you can either live with that reality and deal with it and do everything you can to avoid devastating World War III, or you can sort of like put the blinders on, as we've been doing, as the media has been doing, as the Biden administration has been doing, and continue to sleepwalk into an ever-escalating crisis that ends in a terrifying, terrifying situation.
I agree, and we will hold, I'm going to table some of my thoughts on that, for when we talk about Elon Elon Musk, but to get and again show you the insanity of why this is so dangerous is the ambiguity of the situation on the ground. So let's go ahead and put this up there on the screen, because split screen at the same time said train is moving. By the way, also it could be an exercise, as you said, in order to bluff, in order to scare analysts, and in order to scare the military. We have ongoing Ukrainian gains in the north and in the south, both in the northeast and in the south. The full-fledged fall, essentially, of Lyman pushing on the Kherson front line. There were some reports there that the Russians had fallen back, but that don't appear to be true. But there is heavy, heavy fighting in that region. And of course, the reason that matters is it was just annexed there by the Kremlin. Now, the next one is even more important. Let's go ahead and put this up there on the screen, which is that they have acknowledged that forces have broken through in the Kherson region. Now, again, they haven't said necessarily that they've fallen back, that it's been a catastrophic loss, but this coming after the defeat in Lyman, after the humiliating success from a couple of weeks ago, is just day after day after day of bad actual military news for the Kremlin on the ground, which is also leading them to beclown themselves. So finally, this is a great point from Michael Brendan Dougherty. Let's put this up there, which is that the Kremlin says, we are going to continue to consult the populations of these regions when referring to the regions that are partially controlled by the Ukrainian military. And as he points out, we've annexed these regions, but we don't really know what their borders are. They might be smaller. It's not exactly a message of strength. And that's why, look, I will savage Western policymakers here all day, but these people are the ones who are putting us in such a dangerous position. You are issuing nuclear threats over ground you do not control, where all the territory is fluid. You have proven yourself incapable of even holding this against a third-rate military when you're supposedly great power. I mean, they are the architects of their own nightmare scenario. Nobody asked you to do this. Nobody asked you to annex these people. And your saber rattling is putting us, all of us, in a dangerous position, including your own population.
Oh,
I mean,
absolutely.
if I was scared, if I was in, if the mobilization hadn't, I'd be like, I am getting the hell out of here. There is no future for Russia. In the modern sense, Richard Hanania, a friend of the show, wrote a fantastic piece that I can't stop thinking about, which is that the promise of the Russian and the Chinese projects was they will not have liberal democracy, but they will be able to guarantee certain things like healthcare and all of that. Healthcare, strong economy, as long as you subserve, obviously, your rights to the authoritarian state. The Ukraine situation has basically said that promise of Russia is over. I mean, no matter what happens after this with the Putin regime, with the survival even of some of the hardliners, this will be an economic backwater for decades. Yeah. There's just no getting around that. China also, not to make this too philosophical, but their zero COVID idiocy is actually destroying their economy. Yeah. It possibly will crash the global economy, and they don't care because they would rather have authoritarianism and control people rather than have prosperity for their middle class and also throw people into camps. And I think the point that he was making is he's like, look, at the end of the day, in longevity, like what you're looking in terms of the long market, you really can't bet on these types of states in the interim. So I think that Putin is proving this Putin is proving this prospect, but, and this is the caution, which is that in that chaos and in the demise possibly over the long term, there's a hell of a lot of risk whenever you control the world's largest nuclear arsenal.
I mean, there's part of the Chinese model that has worked phenomenally in terms
over time, absolutely.
Yeah, in terms of growing their middle class, in terms of having a strong state hand, in terms of industrial policy. I mean, a lot of what they have done has been extraordinarily successful, but yeah, you see the cost of that right now with the zero COVID lockdowns and the just blatant authoritarianism that is rampant right now. With regards to Russia, I mean, it's just really hard to wrap your head around the situation that they have put themselves into. And yeah, all the Western antagonisms that we've gone over, and NATO expansion after we said we wouldn't, and inviting Ukraine to join when that was clearly a red line for them, all of those things ultimately Putin and his cronies are the ones that made this decision and have continued to make horrific decisions for themselves and their own population and their future prospects. So right now, I do feel like that is best summed up in the insanity of saying you're going to defend your borders with nuclear weapons, but also that you don't know where those borders are. That says it all right there. There was a piece yesterday that people in this Lyman area that Ukrainians just took back, they were like, wait, we were in Russia? This was supposedly part of the new Russian territory.
They didn't know.
Yeah,
they didn't even know that they were
had no
in it.
internet. They're like, wait, we were Russian like for a minute? What? I mean, they had no idea. So, I mean, that just tells you how like absolutely farcical this whole situation is. But even as it's, you know, kind of funny to laugh at, it's obviously deadly serious. And this whole nuclear train situation just shows you Putin is trying very, very, very hard to convince the West that he may well use tactical nuclear weapons because he's kind of out of other options. And I think we have to take that seriously, even as so much of what they have done has ended up being quite clownish and ultimately bad for their own population. I mean, the number of military-age men who are fleeing the country or trying to flee the country. There's all kinds of reports of businesses and farms that basically can't operate because you had people receiving conscription subpoenas at work, and so they stop coming to work, or they see their friends getting served these subpoenas and they, decide, okay, I got to make a break for it and get out of here altogether. So this is having catastrophic ramifications in the Russian economy, and it's just astonishing to watch, honestly.
No, it really is. And, I'll end with this, which is that I was actually reading as much as I could about what we know about the makeup of the Russian nuclear force, and their nuclear arsenal is actually much more heavily weighted, Krystal, towards these tactical nuclear weapons. It's much more a part of their nuclear doctrine. So of the 7,454 missiles that are nuclear warheads that we know about within the Russian arsenal, 1,800 of them are actually non-strategic tactical nuclear weapons. To compare that to the United States, we have 5,700 nuclear weapons. Only 230 of ours are so-called battlefield tactical nukes. It's a total difference in battlefield ideology, and also why I think that it is worth taking it seriously, which is when you have so much of a makeup of your force, clearly it is part of your application of force in your doctrine to have so many weapons that these are weapons not just of a last resort, but to be reached for in the middle of any such conflict, for things to go to a very bad place. So look, that's the best that we can say for right now. All we know is that according to people in the UK, defense analysts and others, the train is moving. The Pentagon has not yet denied it. From what we know about that, absolutely nothing. Could be a threat, could be real. It's ambiguous as the lines on the ground are being redrawn. And I just underscore again the absolute insanity of we're going to defend our territory, but we don't know what territory
where that territory is.
Where that territory is. It is the single most irresponsible action of a state since the Cuban Missile Crisis. It's just absolutely insane.
Cable news is ripping us apart, dividing the country, making it impossible to function as a society, and making it impossible to know just what is true and what is false. But the good news is they are failing and they know it.
That is why we're building something new, a new mainstream, a healthier one, something more trustworthy, something that we are going to need in one of the most pivotal times in American history. We are building up here for the midterms, for the upcoming presidential election, but we need your help. So if you can help us out by becoming a premium member today at breakingpoints.com, we're trying to change America for the better and the entire world.
So what are you waiting for, guys? Go to breakingpoints.com and sign up and help us build a new mainstream.